Shabbat Shalom. Back in the days when the only way to change the channel on a black and white TV was to get up and turn a knob, in the days when telephones had rotary dials and the only keyboards were on pianos and typewriters, in the ancient days when there were movies you could watch sitting in your car, I became a bar mitzvah and learned this week's Torah portion of Korach in its entirety for recitation in shul before everyone who was important to me and everyone who would endlessly find ways of teasing me if I goofed it all up. Yes, there was a time when I was not a rabbi and was not even thinking in that direction. I learned my Torah portion and the prayers of the morning Shabbat service because that's what everyone else had to do. Thankfully, I enjoyed singing in the temple choir, so this came a bit easier for me than it did to some of my other friends. In preparation for my bar mitzvah, I did exactly what I had to do. I led the morning shacharit service. I chanted the entire Torah portion of Korach and also that of the entire Haftarah from the first book of Samuel. I don't recall reading in depth either the Torah portion or the Haftarah portion in English, but the one thing that sticks in my mind these many years later was a line from the Haftarah in English said by Samuel, "Whose ox or ass have I taken?" What else would you expect from a 13-year-old? I remember meeting with my rabbi, Bernard Raskus of blessed memory, who taught me about the Torah portion of Korach and his rebellion. I remember him telling me that Korach was not all that evil. He rebelled for what he thought was right. Rabbi Raskus said to me that it was okay for people to Rabbi Raskus said to me that it was okay for people to rebel for what they believed in, to take risks. He was that kind of rabbi, rebellious, or at least that's the way it seemed to me, as he was always standing up for causes like civil rights, equality for women. I remember him speaking out about the Vietnam War and the emerging generation gap. Rabbi Raskus shared with me that Korach failed in his rebellion because he did it in all the wrong ways. Korach embarrassed Moses and Aaron, bringing about unrest among the people, and ultimately he achieved none of his goals. Rabbi Raskus told me that it was okay to rebel, to think differently, as long as I did it better than Korach did, as long as I learned the lesson from his story. Every year when we read the Torah portion of Korach, I continue to try and figure it all out. For each new year brings its own unique perspective, circumstances, and context. It's not an easy story. What makes it difficult for us is that so much of it doesn't make sense. What is Korach after? Korach says one thing: fairness and equality among the entire people of Israel and their access to God. And Moses responds to Korach's words by saying that Korach is after special rights for the Levites. Korach says, "You've gone too far, for all the community is holy and God is in their midst. Why do you, Moses and Aaron, set yourselves above the people?" And Moses says Korach has gone too far, using Korach's own words. But Korach didn't actually go far enough. He never got to say what his complaints were about. Moses makes a bet with Korach as to whose offerings will be accepted, Korach's or Aaron's. Korach takes him up on this bet for reasons which also make no sense, since surely Korach must have known that the deck was stacked against him and he couldn't win an offering contest with Aaron, who had God's stamp of approval. So Korach and his followers went and got their fire pans as instructed by Moses and put fire in them along with incense as an offering to God. Why Korach went along with this bet is anyone's guess. Of course, Korach lost the bet. And in losing, God consumed him and his 250 followers by the very fire they set in their fire pans. Clearly, it's dangerous when we start to believe our own lies, like Korach did. He projects his own shortcomings onto Moses. For example, he says that Moses lifts himself up above the people. He accuses Moses, who is famous for his humility, of being arrogant. But it is Korach who is overreaching. The very things Korach says he wants for everyone else are the things he denies by his own behavior with Moses. He creates a disaster for everyone while claiming to be working on their behalf. Rabbi Janet Martyr suggests that this story teaches us not about the struggles between these two men, but the struggle between two sides with which we live. Each of us contains a Moses, the part of ourselves that is courageous, right, aware, full of faith and trust, ready to take on challenges. The Moses part looks toward the future with confidence and assurance. And then there's the Korach part of ourselves, the purely negative energy we have inside waiting to pounce and lead us to our own destruction. The Korach inside leads us to be indiscreet, incorrect, harmful to ourselves and to others. The Korach inside helps us to sabotage every good thing we try to do. This is the Korach of rebellion without a good cause, poorly expressed rebellion, uncontrolled rejection of the status quo for the sake of just doing so. Our inner Korach saps our strength, kills our enthusiasm, robs our souls. It's for that reason that it's important to see Korach so utterly destroyed by fire. It's only when Korach is destroyed that Moses is able to go on with the journey toward the future. And it's only when we confront our own Korachs and overcome them that we can get beyond that negative energy and achieve our goals. Sometimes our shortcomings, our problems, our challenges are really reflections of our own internal Korach. Like Korach, we see what's wrong in other people, but we really see in them what we see in them is ourselves. It's easier to find fault with others than to fix what's wrong inside of us. It's easier to rebel against others than to recognize the places in our own lives where we need to turn ourselves around. In Pirkei Avot, Ethics of Our Fathers, the rabbis teach, who is courageous? Those who overcome their own fears. People who overcome their own internal Korach are courageous. We need our greatest strength for self-mastery to do battle with the inner Korach, who saps our enthusiasm, mocks our dreams, stunts our growth, poisons our relationships. May God give us all the wisdom to figure out which is which, and the courage to win those battles which are for the sake of heaven and for good and holy purposes. Shabbat Shalom.